Thank you for coming. If you're in the right room, you're here to find out how to improve decorum in shul. This is going to be a very topless seminar. I hope that it won't be as much of a lecture as a give and take. We'll share ideas. I'll do most of the sharing, but we'll leave some time for you as well. And I just want to introduce myself first of all. I'm Gary Buckwald. I live in Oceanside, New York. That's on Long Island. I moved here from Boston, and I'm a Baal Tefillah. I've been a Baal Tefillah for many years for the High Holidays in Portland, Maine. I also have a choir that I travel around with leading Shabbat services called Kol Tefillah. And therefore, I not have only belonged to many shuls, but I have seen many shuls and have observed very carefully what all of them do to try to help improve shul decorum. I can assure you it's not just in your shul that it may be a little bit of a problem. So the outline of today's workshop is, by the way, note-taking won't be so necessary in that you have in your packets, if you have a packet, a listing, right, of over 50 tactics. We're going to be discussing those, so you have them all in that list. We're going to be talking about both positive and negative approaches. So just remember one thing. I don't personally endorse every single idea, and not every idea is going to be right for you. But all of them have some potential. And very many times I find that Gabbaim, they feel that they have to keep trying things on a rotating basis because what works, and then they have to shift gears and try something else. So just keep an open mind as we go through the different ideas. It's really a brainstorming session to try to give you some, again, chizuk for not throwing up your hands and feeling like there's nothing that can be done other than let's start a new shul. Right. Now, a friend of mine said, Gary, you're talking to Gabbaim. Well, what's the problem? If you have a few problem individuals in the shul, the Gabbai threatens not to give them an aliyah. Okay. If that doesn't work, you threaten to give them an aliyah. And if that doesn't work, you tell them they're going to have to pay for it. Okay. You'll see. There's many techniques. We're going to be talking about both positive, as I said, and negative approaches. You could call them approaches and reproaches. Okay, because some of everything is going to work. Let's start, though. I know I'm preaching to the choir to some degree, but let's just start with a review quickly of the basics of behavior in shul. And then you'll see what my point is going to be about this. Okay, levity is forbidden in synagogues and batei midrash. Levity includes joking, laughing, fooling, and idle conversation, among other things. Idle conversation even includes talk about secular subjects that is permitted elsewhere, such as business matters, not to mention generally forbidden talk, such as lashon hara, rechilus, and vexatious speech. It's all in the Mishnah Brura. During the Chazin's repetition of Shmona Esrei, the congregation must remain silent and concentrate and answer Amen after each bracha. If there are not at least 9 concentrating on the brachot, then they are virtually brachot levatala. Therefore, each person should conduct himself as if there will not be 9 concentrating without him. This is all in the Mishnah Brura or Chaim 124. You have this in the Hebrew and English these days, easily accessible. And not only that, but some of these are published in the back of the Art Scroll Sidurim. So you can easily point these out to any individuals who may need a little reminding. Even reciting Tehillim or other prayers and learning Torah are forbidden during the Chazin's repetition of Shmona Esrei. We're going to come back to that one. Conversation is strictly forbidden during the Chazin's repetition of Shmona Esrei. If one speaks at this time, his sin is too great to bear, and he must be reprimanded. We have witnessed the destruction of a number of synagogues due to this sin. Once Kriyas Torah has begun, it is forbidden to talk, even words of Torah. It is highly questionable whether one may even learn Torah silently instead of following the Torah reading. It is forbidden to talk or learn during any other part of davening, even during the recitation of supplementary piyutim that one is not accustomed to say. Idle conversation is forbidden even when the congregation is not praying, i.e. before and after davening. This is severe, but You'll find it in Kaf Chaim or Chaim 151. If a person cannot control his talking in shul, it is preferable that he pray at home and not attend shul at all. Although it is a mitzvah to attend synagogues and batei midrash, if someone engages there in idle conversation, his sin outweighs and vanquishes the mitzvah. Those who talk should be rebuked and even shamed publicly, regardless of their wealth or position. A person must make it clear to others that he does not talk in shul, and he should do so in a way that makes them want to act as he does. One who talks in shul shows his contempt for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He drives out the Shekhinah and causes it to depart from Klal Yisrael. He is a transgressor who induces others to sin, causes the galus to be prolonged, and prevents prayers from being heard. He has no share in the God of Israel. Hashem deflects every accusation of the Satan against the Jewish people with his attribute of mercy. But when the Satan calls attention to their idle chatter and disrespect in shul, Hashem has no response, so to speak, for even Gentiles conduct themselves with awe and reverence in their places of worship. Hashem thereupon gives the Satan permission to wreak destruction. So what is the point of that review? I'm sure many of you know that already, but some of you and some of the administration in your shuls think that, decorum is a nice to have. And my point in reviewing this with you is that the halacha is very clear. It's very clear, and it's on your side. So that's why I want to go through various tactics for improving shul decorum. We're going to talk about the role of the rabbi, the president, the gabbayim. I'm not going to restrict myself just to what the gabbai does because, let's face it, the gabbai has a dual role. The gabbai manages not only the process of the service, but the gabbai is an activist also, right, and has a vested interest in promoting shul decorum. Not only that, even if he doesn't have it himself, there are, as I'm sure you know, many in your congregation who believe that you have that responsibility, right? And they'll remind you of it too. They won't necessarily shush their neighbor, but they'll tell you that's your job to take care of the problem. Okay, so let's start with the rabbi then, because sometimes rabbis need a little chizuk for doing the right thing. The rabbi sometimes has to learn that he can put down his foot. You'd be amazed at the difference it makes just the first time the rabbi says something to the congregation. Okay, in my paper, we'll just read a few of the things that the rabbi can do. And I've seen all of this. This is all taken from various observations, different congregations around the country. The rabbi stands up and looks right at the offenders. Okay, there's no substitute for that. And of course, you're also going to be listening. You have different size shuls. Some of this will work in a smaller setting, some in a larger setting. Again, you have to judge what is right for your shul. Okay, the rabbi or president stands silently on the bima and waits for silence before nodding to the shaliach tzibur that he may proceed. And this is done as often as necessary, even if chatter resumes within 60 seconds. Okay, why is that? You really have to be serious about it. If you're going to do something, do it seriously and with commitment. If you're going to stop the service and then the chatter's going to resume right away and you don't stop it, there's not really much accomplished except maybe 30 seconds of kavanah for people. Many times the gabbai or his designee will signal a stop and wait for silence. He puts his hand down on the shtender in front of the shaliach tzibur. Okay, and that indicates to the shaliach tzibur that he can stop. Okay, in one place, the new rabbi instituted a policy whereby he stops the service for a full 2 minutes from the time that people stop talking. It is reasoned that after a few such timeouts, people will realize how much this will increase the time they're in shul. There'll be more pressure on the talkers by their fellow congregants to keep quiet. And when it becomes no longer socially acceptable to talk during davening, people won't do it any longer. That has been done. And you know what? you don't have to do it for that long before people get the message. I mean, that's certainly toward the more severe side. The rabbi will stop talk about severe. The rabbi stops the service and actually names those for whom the congregation is waiting in order to proceed. The rabbi and or president of the congregation ejects offenders from the sanctuary. Upon one occasion, I heard it told, everybody knew this, the rabbi actually asked the president to leave the synagogue. That's good. Okay, at the conclusion of the Musaf, Kedusha, the rabbi leaves the bima at the front of the shul and walks slowly down the center aisle, making eye contact with as many congregants as possible. Okay, they know what that's for. And he's able to accomplish that again without saying a word. Okay, and the rabbi will approach certain repeat offenders after Shabbat to speak with them individually and ask for their cooperation. Now, that's a tactic that I think could be used certainly more often than less. It's something that doesn't take place in the shul itself, but it's up to the Gabbai or the president or the rabbi taking the initiative to speak to certain people about the importance of prayer, about what they're doing to their fellow man who's trying to concentrate and have kavanah while they daven in shul. A lot can be done with that. And by the way, that's the answer to the gentleman who asked the question in the other workshop room about what do you do when it's the president and the administration who does the talking, and how do you approach that? So you do it quietly afterwards, and you have the rabbi talk with them. Okay, let's talk about the president. The president can make certain announcements. It's always empowering to the Gabbai. Obviously, I said before, the Gabbai has that responsibility, but it's always nice for the Gabbai to feel that he's got the support of both the rabbi and the president at times. And by the president making certain announcements, again, people won't, so to speak, take it out on the Gabbai, but realize that the Gabbai is just enforcing the will of the rabbi or the president, or we're going to talk later about enforcing the will of the congregation itself. Okay, what can the president do? Making a simple announcement. To preserve the sanctity of our service, we request that you take your conversation outside the sanctuary. Very simple, very to the point. When people receive a direct request like that, it does impact them. The president can stand up there and say, we'll wait as long as it takes. Now, that relates to the situation in which, let's say, the Gabbai has taken the lead in putting his hand on the stender, stopping the service, and some obstinate people won't stop talking. What does the Gabbai do? The Gabbai feels with every second that goes by, it's like a minute, it's like an hour. He feels the pressure. I can't hold up the service. Again, caucus with the president or the vice president that he's sitting in, have the president stand and say, we'll wait as long as it takes. And that completely removes the pressure from the Gabbai. Suggestion 43 here. Before Ein Kelohenu, sometimes you have a katan, a lead Ein Kelohenu, and the decorum just goes, Okay, here's an announcement. You can modify this to your suiting. Here's an announcement. A youngster deserves as much respect for leading the service unless we want to teach otherwise. All right, that'll get a reaction, and hopefully the right one. Okay, so let's talk about the positive versus the negative approach. These are mostly the negative. And I say negative, but really, you can look as a matter of your perspective too. It's all somewhat positive because the Gabbai should keep in mind that people want to do the right thing. They really do want to do the right thing. It's the Yetzer Hara working against them. Okay? If you're on the side of the Yetzer HaTov, they need some reminders. Okay? They need some chizuk. So even what I've called negative, look at it in a positive light, as though you're reinforcing, you're helping everyone shall do what they really want to be doing. Okay, here's from an article in the Rabbi's Letter. This is a publication of the National Council of Young Israel. This was written by Rabbi Heshi Kleinman. talking during davening. Generally, people do, this is his opinion, okay? You gotta be open to all opinions. Generally, people do not talk during davening out of disrespect for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or out of disregard for their neighbor trying to daven. They talk because they are bored. Since they do not feel inspired or spiritually awakened during davening, they express themselves otherwise. Okay, Rabbi Kleinman believes that instead of shushing people, or stopping the davening several times to achieve a minimum level of decorum, a more effective and workable solution is to help people learn what davening is really about. By treating the cause of the problem, and not just the symptom, we could develop greater respect for and become more involved with our davening, thereby significantly eliminating talking during davening. Okay, you have many that feel that way. Forget all the shushing and the reminders and so on, but concentrate on the positive aspects of education. Okay, so some of the ideas that are listed in the paper are to have the rabbi dedicate certain amounts of time, certain drushes maybe, on the importance of tefillah, the meaning of tefillah, have him inspire everyone to really come to shul to do what they're supposed to do. Here are some various subjects, topics. What is the purpose of tefillah? How can one spiritually grow through tefillah? What is this great koach of tefillah that makes it greater than ma'asim tovim and karbanot? Actually, how powerful is tefillah? Can it change gezerot? Can it change mazal? Why does tefillah have such a great koach in this world? Why do we daven, since everything that we receive from Hashem is latov anyway? Because everything that we receive from Hashem is latov, why would we want to be mitpalel to change anything? Can tefillah change decrees latov? Why may it appear that sometimes not all our tefillot are answered? If tefillah is so paramount, why does it appear that people get what they want even if they do not daven at all, or if they appear to daven improperly? Why is Sefer Tehillim always used when davening in times of tzara or a cholah? What is considered a proper davening? How does one daven with kavanah? Must I daven the whole davening with kavanah? Intriguing, right? All of these are very thought-provoking. You'd have a lot of interest if the rabbi would give a small shiur, let's say before the davening. That's an idea. Or as I said, dedicate some drushot throughout the year to topics like this. Why do we so very often have difficulty davening with kavanah? Are there any effective techniques to use in order to improve our davening? If I don't daven with kavanah, is it still a meaningful davening? Okay, there's plenty of topics around that issue, around the importance of davening and the meaning of prayers. Okay, the suggestions around that, you'll see 35, 36, 37, 38. That's what I've just reviewed. Okay, so let's talk now about the Gabbai. That's why you're here. And you should realize there's something very important that sets you apart from the rabbi and from the president. What sets you apart from the rabbi? You're not hired. Right? It's no kidding. This is not a joke. The rabbi is still an employee of the shul in most places. The rabbi is an employee and he wants to preserve his, relationship with the shul. What sets you apart from the president? You're not elected. That's right. The president is still, he needs to be a popular guy. There were some jokes about the popularity of Gabbayim. But you know what? Gabbayim can be just as popular as the president if they is elected. Okay. Always the exception. Always the exception. Let me just ask you, where the Gabbai is elected, is it the one who loses the election that becomes the Gabbai? Okay. So the Gabbai has a unique position. He has a unique responsibility. What can he do with it? Okay, how about let's start by choosing an appropriate shaliach tzibur. Let's start with that. You just heard here, I don't need to repeat all the talk from before. You heard earlier in the day that it's important to choose someone that has a pleasant voice, who has a loud enough voice, that the kahal wants to hear as their shaliach tzibur. Okay? That makes an enormous difference for the decorum in the shul. That, right. That's true. That's true. So the gentleman's pointing out that, in his shul, maybe it is the Gabbai's responsibility. He doesn't put it off, but as I said earlier in my introduction, each shul is different. Each shul, the Gabbai's going to say it's not my job. The president will say it's not my job. I've heard the rabbi say it's not his job. But, I'm presenting the ideal, and I'm presenting enough ideas so that something in this list of more than 50 is going to work in your place. And frequently, as I said, it's going to be a combination of things that work, and sometimes even a rotation of things that work over time. And we're going to get to the point about shortening the service. That's a good one. Okay, so we talked about choosing an appropriate shaliach tzibur. We talked about being serious, especially if you're going to use the tactic of stopping the davening. So one tactic is to stop the service when you see the talking, not necessarily when it becomes too loud. That demonstrates commitment. That demonstrates seriousness. If you stop it, and in a large place, it's almost necessary, because what happens? The people around the front of the congregation, or the center, if you have a center bima, so they're quiet and they can hear. But meanwhile, the back is, to put it nicely, a zoo. So one tactic is to stop the service when you see the talking. And also, you don't get into the rut. I see it all the time. Shuls will use the technique of stopping the davening till it gets quiet. And you know what people then assume the rule is? The rule is that it's going to get stopped. The service is going to be stopped if it gets too loud. Well, you tell me what pair of talkers thinks they're going to push it over the threshold? No pair, right? So every two people that are conversing, they're going to converse, not worried about being the cause of stopping the service. And that's why if you have a rule like the Gabbai is going to stop the service when he sees people talking, then they know everybody counts. It's on everybody's shoulders. Okay, there was an allusion also earlier to setting a good example by not kibitzing. And this, again, is serious. I'm talking to the Gabbayim now here, but it refers to the Gabbai, it refers to the president, to the rabbi. You cannot be taken seriously for improving decorum if you yourself are going to kibitz with people. And many Gabbayim, they think they have, an exemption because naturally they have to talk, they have to make arrangements, aliyahs, who's going to lead Musaf. Listen, some of that can be done ahead of time. I know many shuls that arrange the Baal Shacharit and the Baal Musaf, I'm talking about on Shabbat, ahead of time. People know they're going to be davening. Aliyahs are sometimes arranged ahead of time, even when not. Even if you have to, do that in the shul, people can tell by looking at you, if not hearing you. People can tell when you're doing the business of Gabbai, arranging for an aliyah, versus when you're kibitzing. So don't feel that you have an exclusion because you have to talk about aliyahs and stuff. Don't feel that you don't have, a responsibility to set a good example. And talk to the president and the rabbi, if necessary, about having them follow suit. It's very important, especially if they're sitting up there on the bima in front of the kahal, to set a good example by not talking during the service. And also we talked about not learning Gemara during the Chazarat HaShatz. Okay, it's wrong, it can be pointed out. It detracts from the seriousness that the call is supposed to be concentrating on the prayers and saying amen to what they heard, as opposed to just what they call an orphan amen. Yes. Right. Exactly. We're just going to talk about Mishaberos now, but the comment was about kids in the shul and what to do about kids. I will say one thing. I haven't really addressed the issue of noisy kids. Most of the feedback I get is that what is most disturbing is the adults causing. I mean, kids can't help themselves, and plus there's many shuls that want to grow and encourage parents with young kids to bring them. I haven't addressed that at all. There's certainly techniques about having, kids groups and a junior minyan and so on. That's all well and good. But keep in mind that anything I'm talking about regarding, talking inappropriately, I'm not addressing myself to children. Absolutely. We can have a show of hands. How many Gabbaim would stop the Balkore from laning? Most of the room. Right. It's absolutely essential. Some would say, I'm mixed on this, but some would say it's more important to have absolute silence during the Kriya. Some would say it's just as important not to have talking during Chazarat Hashatz. I would say you're in the best, position if you're consistent and enforce it across the board. But it's absolutely done. And that's exactly what he does. The Gabbai will just put his hand out. That's a signal for the Balkore. That relieves the Balkore, you see, from being the one pressured to continue or to stop. Or the Shaliach Tzibur. Just as you would appreciate it if the rabbi or the president got up and said something to give you, the support, so you are giving the support to the one who's leading the service or reading the Torah, for them to stop and wait for quiet. Right. Yes. So the gentleman is asking, what can we do to, enforce, decorum, but yet be softer about it or in a lighter. That's completely up to the personality, I would say, of the rabbi and the president. I mean, all of the suggestions you see here are just the way some shuls, handle it, and they handle it in a more stern fashion because it's the kind of subject where you don't want to joke about it, or if you want to joke about it, you do it in the context of an introduction to a serious story by the Chafetz Chaim, who says how terrible and blasphemous it is to have disrespect in shul. Right. Right. The quiet technique works in many places. Right. Let me just get to a few more points, and then we'll still have time for more comments and questions. The gentleman mentioned making the Mishaberachs. Another suggestion, maybe many of you have already implemented this. Just before reciting the Mishaberach prayers for the sick, the congregation is requested to focus its kavanah on achieving a refuah shlema for all those who need it. Again, a very simple announcement. You're asking them to focus their kavanah. If you do that, there's very little chance that the decorum is going to break down between the mishaberachs. Now, where you have the case, a Mishaberach has said for each individual, you have the whole line, at the Bima. Many shuls have adopted the practice of saying one Mishaberach, or maybe one for the men, one for the women, and everyone says the name at their seat. Try it. It saves time. It preserves decorum. Everyone is absolutely quiet. You could argue that the prayer is actually more effective done that way. Their name. Somebody has, right. Well, you could say it's the rabbi's problem. You could say it's the administration's problem. You're going to bring that eventually to the congregation. You're going to bring it to a congregational meeting, or better yet, to a meeting of, a ritual committee or a synagogue committee, and let them decide. You've crossed the line. You've exceeded the threshold where it's no longer practical. Right. You can send in the names by email. Okay, I want to say another word about a Mishaberach. Who knows that there is a formal Mishaberach for those who refrain from talking during services? Say it every Shabbos. Great. I'm just going to read it to you quickly. This has been instituted in many shuls, again, as a way of reinforcing their commitment to proper decorum in shul. Mi sheberach avotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aharon, David, Shlomo, hu yivarech et kol mi sheshomer piv u'leshono, shelo ledaber be'et hatfilah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmerehu mikol tzara v'tzukah mikol nego u'machala, v'yachulu alav kol habrachot haktuvot b'sefer Torat Moshe Rabbeinu u'v'chol sifrei hanavi'im v'haktuvim, v'yizkel lir'ot banim chayim v'kayamim, v'gadleim leTorah u'lechupah u'lema'asim tovim, v'avod et Hashem Elokeinu tamid be'emet u'v'tamim v'nomar Amen. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses and Aaron, David and Shlomo, may he bless everyone who guards his mouth and tongue and refrains from talking during the prayer service. May the Holy One, blessed is he, protect him from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness. May all the blessings written in the Torah of Moses and in the books of the prophets and writings be applied to him. May he merit seeing his children alive and established. May he raise them to Torah, the wedding canopy, and good deeds. May he serve Hashem our God in truth and integrity. And now let us respond. Amen. Amen. Right. All I can do is, right. Okay, just want to make a few more points, then we're going to have questions and answers. Someone asked about where these things are available. There is a group, a discussion group called Gabbai on yahoogroups.com. Are you familiar with Yahoo Groups? There's many email distribution lists. Many shuls have email distribution lists set up on Yahoo Groups. If you go to groups.yahoo.com and look for the Gabbai group, and in the files section, you'll find copies of my paper. If you need additional copies of that, you'll find a copy of the Mishaberach I just read, and it's a place to share ideas amongst the Gabbayim. And also available through the OU.
All of this material will be available through the OU's Community and Synagogue Services Department.
Right. Okay, I just want to say something about shortening the service. Many shuls have recently adopted a technique of shortening, so promising a 2-hour service. It can be done. A 2-hour service, 8:45 to 10:45. What does that exclude? The rabbi's speech. When does he do it? After Adon Olam. in a place where you have the full Torah reading and a normal speed davening. It takes 2 hours to do the davening. They'll do Adon Olam, and following Adon Olam, then you have announcements, and then the rabbi's drasha. Look, anybody who stays, it's not half. There's a big shul in Long Island. There's a small group that do leave. But look, what you're left with are the people that really want to hear the drasha and are not about to disturb their neighbor during the speech, right? And there's a promise not to talk because it's only, for 2 hours you can do it. I just want to say that there's something also, I don't know if the OU is promoting it this year, but they have in the past. There's a certain Shabbat, okay? It's Parshat B'Shalach. It's also Shabbat Shirah, but it's also known by Shabbat Tacharishun. There's a pasuk in B'Shalach. Do you know what it is? Hashem Yilachem Lachem Ba'atem Tacharishun. So we use that Shabbos and that pasuk as a way of raising awareness. There's a website dedicated just to this Shabbos and all the materials that you could distribute in advance as source materials. It's called project-awareness.com. www.project-awareness.com. I also mention it in my paper, so you do have it. You don't have to write it down. You have it in your packets. And that's a wealth of information, papers. You could read different views and other things. But it's an opportunity for raising awareness about the necessity of keeping quiet.
The idea that you will only be recited on those Shabbos when the Gabbai determined that the decorum warrants that it has to be recited because they believe it's visible.
Yes, I was going to say it is a trade-off, obviously, between shortening the service and adding a Mishaberach. Okay, it's a trade-off. You have to decide if it's going to work for you, and some will only use it on the special Shabbatot dedicated to improving, like Shabbat Tacharishun. That's when they'll make a special deal of it. I have some publicity. Also, the handout that went around. This is also Shmirash Halashon Yomi. Some of you do this, every day, but there was one particular one written day 20, apparently, about this mitzvah. And this was, everyone found this on their seat one Shabbos morning. I don't recall if it was Shabbat Tacharishon, but somebody distributed these at night on every seat in the shul, and everybody found this on their seat on Shabbos morning. The Shabbat Tacharishon, I've seen advertised, again, on websites. The OU had an announcement a few years ago. I don't have a copy of that. But one particular shul said this Shabbat Tacharishon is a 100 talk-free Shabbos dedicated to the memory of Max Safran, the founder of the Awareness Project. The Awareness Project promotes proper decorum during davening. This Shabbos marks the 5th annual national commemoration of Shabbos Tacharishon. I read you the pasuk. We ask that everyone refrain from any conversations during the entire service on Friday night and Shabbos morning. We ask that anyone who cannot remain silent during the entire service and wishes to engage in conversations of any kind, please step outside the shul. Okay? It says the service will be stopped when people are seen talking, not when the talking gets too loud. And a special formal Mishaberach of the Tosfos Yom Tov, I didn't credit him for composing that, will be recited for the benefit of all those who properly refrain from talking during the service. Thanks for your cooperation. So again, you can also write to me. My email address is at the end of the paper, or if you don't have a paper, Gary@neverfeltbetter.com. I'm willing to answer or send you any of these materials. Gary@neverfeltbetter.com, and we'll take some more questions and answers. That is one of the techniques. One of the techniques is to have a kiddush every week and then remind people without fail they're going to have a chance to socialize after the service. Here's another announcement. Gentlemen, it is respectful and proper to remain absolutely silent after finishing your silent Shemona Esrei so as not to disturb your neighbor's concentration and prayer. Just make that simple announcement right before Baruch Hu. Again, because it's very troublesome to people who are davening the silent Shemona Esrei, and then to have people, as soon as they finish, they're talking. And they're talking within a few amos of the person who's still within their amida. Yeah. I didn't think that was still a problem. The OU squashed all the Kiddush clubs. That was a couple years ago. So I didn't. Oh. And the problem of children, again, I urge you to start a process within the shul. Getting support from the congregation starts with chartering a committee. Okay, the motion to charter such a committee could read like this. Moved that the president be directed to appoint within 2 weeks of taking office a chairman of the synagogue committee who is empowered and directed to appoint by a certain date not less than 4 additional committee members in consultation with the president. The first mission of the synagogue committee shall be to enhance members' spiritual experience in shul, fostering both greater closeness to Hashem and respect Adam L'Chaveiro through 1, providing appropriate education in partnership with the rabbi, and 2, by drafting policies related to maintaining proper decorum in shul, proposing them to the general membership, then implementing and enforcing them. You see how that covers the whole range? You'll have the support of the congregation if they really want it. I mean, this is how you'll determine whether you're going to have to resort to the last solution, which is a separate minyan. It's been done. Don't laugh at that either. There's a separate minyan of like-minded people who get together and have a quiet davening. Sometimes that's the only way to do it. I won't mention the alternative about leaving the shul and starting a shul on the basis of that's been done many times also. That's a really quiet shul. But you have here the foundation of starting a committee and getting a vote of the membership. And then the Gabbai is simply enforcing the will of the membership. Tactics we're talking about. The halacha is not up for the vote. It's which tactics will be employed in support of the halacha. Yes. Gentleman is saying you can't be both, maintaining a relationship with people, being on the friendly side, being able to smooth over the problems with people missing their aliyahs, and so on. It's not the job of the Gabbai. I have a 2-word answer for you. A 2-word answer is yes. You do it with the blessing of the Rav, and it's right. Listen, in some shuls, it's an issue with people reading newspapers in shul. In some places not. Some tactics are provide divrei Torah, provide diversions, provide extra reading material to engage people. It's not your role to be, as you said, judge and jury and so on. But my 2-word answer to you before is about how does a Gabbai expected to do that? Tough love. Tough love. Love the people and maintain a relationship, but let them know what the halacha is. Thank you very much.